Welcome back to the Buddhist Bookshelf YouTube channel. Today, we will reading Heart Sutra. Let's start off with the first preface. When four assemblies jointly invited the great master of Chan Sham to expound the Heart Sutra at the Buddhist Library of China, he made an all-out effort, although his lecture series was to last 9 grueling days, and even though he was already 84 years old. He enjoyed teaching Buddha Dharma, and those who came to listen were delighted. During those 9 days, there was standing room only every time he lectured, a clear sign of the greatness of that Dharma assembly in this 5 Kasaya period of turbidity. The old master explained the sutra directly, eluding conventional restrictions. Although he used the traditional divisions of the Buddha's teaching into classes, on many occasions he dealt broadly with the general idea. Initially, his aim was to explain the Heart Sutra, but he commented, likewise, on the Lotus Sutra, and while discussing the doctrine, broached the topic of the world situation as well. And why? Because all dharmas are Buddha Dharma and all sutras are one sutra. Buddha Dharma is never separated from the world. All phenomena are Buddha Dharma, and whoever understands completely does not have a single mote of dust settle on him or her. All one's words and thoughts are thereby freed from obstacles. Each of one's statements, whether harsh or delicate, is always exact and to the point. Sentient beings receptive to the Dharma will have their wisdom eye opened upon hearing this teaching, but those with distorted vision are bound to be bewildered and, most likely, will miss the whole point. Some individuals excel in the knowledge of every rule and every convention, and their words flood forth without surcease. They may have acquired mastery over the divisions and classifications of the Buddha's teaching, but not understanding its meaning, they cannot avoid getting entangled. Playing with words and turning them about, they are bewitched, and even though their speech is systematic and orderly, they fail to understand the ultimate and lose sight of the truth. According to one of the early Buddhist sages, the entire universe is one sutra of the sramana, and, also, the entire universe is the eye of a sramana. Although an enlightened person might spend a lot of time reading a sutra, he or she will not carry it around in his or her mind. One might say one is reading sutras not with one's eyes, but with one's wisdom, and, though reading all day long, there are really no sutras to read. My great old teacher explained the Heart Sutra by highlighting its salient points in a prologue. According to his explanation, all is really Buddha Dharma, and every single form, and each tiny bit of color is the middle way. Speaking naturally and freely, he received support from all sides, precisely because all is Buddha Dharma. The great old teacher expounded the Heart Sutra every day for 9 days, yet the Heart Sutra itself was never mentioned. This is truly the way to expound the Heart Sutra. The master lectured in Mandarin, and Upasaka Wang Kai translated into Cantonese, making the Cantonese people very happy. Because of these lectures, many of them now understand the Heart Sutra. Those who knew both dialects praised him for the integrity of his translation. Having read his notes he made while translating, I concluded, in my turn, that Upasaka Wang Kai made every effort to retain the original meaning. Every sentence and every word is exactly as it was used by the great old master. Only the dialect is different. The translator's descriptions convey even the sounds and the nuances to such a degree that reading them is equal to hearing them spoken. Upasaka Wang stood outside the adamantine door and eventually made a breakthrough, using his superior knowledge and skills, the way one would use an axe to break down any ordinary door. People entered and discovered what the Heart Sutra holds. I believe he understands what his treasury is and what his virtues are. Wouldn't you agree? Disciple Nyen in the year of Wu Su, June 1958. The second preface. The Buddha Dharma is profound and wonderful, but to expound the unfathomable doctrine in all its depth is far from easy. Some people devote most of their energy and thought to the Dharma by teaching or explaining the sutras, however, in their deducing and in their searching for terms and supportive quotations, they have not yet reached the level of the Buddha's mind. The one who has not climbed Mount Tai-Shan, can only say, how majestic. Someone who has not seen the Yellow River but who yet describes how great, how vast it is not speaking from his own experience. If one's view regarding the Dharma is based on speculation, one's understanding will not be clear, as one is not then going to be in a position to explain the Dharma successfully to others. When the teacher lacks understanding of the Dharma, it is hard on the students. They must study too hard to make up for the incomplete guidance. They might even become discouraged and give up, fearing failure, and that would be such a pity. When the great master expounded the Heart Sutra in the Buddhist Library of China, I translated his lectures from Mandarin into Cantonese. I had taken refuge in the 3 jewels from my master many years before that, and Lakuo, another master, had taught me Buddha Dharma. Obliging and kind, he did not abandon me even though I was foolish. He guided me patiently to the right path. Bound by my fixed karma, I am constantly in a hurry and do not devote enough time to the Tathagata's teachings. It is difficult to reduce my ignorance and change my habits, and my mind is as dull as it was before I started aspiring to Buddha Dharma. However, the Grand Master Tan Hsu's practice of the Tao of Bodhi is most serious. He thoroughly comprehends the unsurpassed Dharma in all its implications, and his Tao is of the highest integrity. His great reputation has long been established. My goal while learning Buddha Dharma was to work with an all-out effort to follow faithfully and to be authorized to translate. I feel, nevertheless, uneasy about my own limited knowledge. Prior to his systematic explanation of the sutra, the master presented in everyday language and with perfect freedom of expression the results of his thorough and exhaustive study, bringing into play all the subtlety of the wondrous and profound Dharma. It seemed as easy as if he had peeled a plantain or stripped a cocoon, using many carefully chosen examples along the way to make his discourse more relevant in terms of daily life. The audience was very impressed and deeply moved. If the Grand Master had not already climbed Mount Tai and had not already seen the Yellow River with his own eyes, how could he have expressed himself so lucidly, so consistently? During those 9 days of his lectures, the entire Dharma assembly experienced a deep sense of well-being, and at the conclusion of the series, they all agreed to take up a collection for the publication of the Master's discourses, which themselves are to be used as an offering to all mankind and to provide a good condition for the Dharma's condition in the future. With this in mind, I have accepted the responsibility for arranging and organizing my notes on the Master's discourses. Other commentaries I have read are brief and to the point, but that approach does not suit all readers. Consequently, I chose not to edit my record of these lectures, but handed them over as complete and integral to the Grand Master's teaching. I did not avoid or dodge any of the problems, I just presented the record in a straightforward manner. Also, because people have difficulty sometimes with literary language, I did not take the liberty to emphasize, exaggerate or add anything for fear of losing the meaning and the expressions characteristic of the Grand Master's discourse. May I be forgiven for my awkward presentation. Wang Kai, disciple of the Three Jewels, the year of Wu Su, April 1958, Hong Kong. Translator's introduction. Wonderful Prajna. Mother of all Buddhas and the supreme guide and teacher of sages and saints. All that is comes from Prajna and returns to Prajna. Sentient beings experience birth and death on the wheel of life and death, their minds deeply affected by ignorance, bent by the 5 skandhas, and confused and submerged in the ocean of suffering for long kalpas. How regrettable. Prajna is said to be the light in the darkness of a very long night. On the ebb and flow of the ocean of suffering, Prajna is a raft. To a house consumed by a blazing fire, Prajna is the rain. Without Prajna the universe is darkness, without Prajna the human mind is ignorant, without Prajna sentient beings suffer without respite. Cultivation of the Prajñāpāramitā, the perfected virtue of knowing truth by intuitive insight, relieves us from our suffering and helps us to overcome all kinds of calamities. All Buddhas of the past, present and future attain Prajna, and the sages and saints have cultivated Prajna. Therefore, all of us need to cultivate the practice of Prajna. The wonderful doctrine of Prajna is true and, therefore, real, it is perfect in all places and at all times, and yet it is inconceivable. If one can understand that voidness is not void since radiant existence exists within its mystery, then, at that moment, all is perceived as void. Sages and saints become accomplished by means of Prajna, the ultimate ground sentient beings share. The uninformed majority fails to understand all that exists is produced by causes and conditions, and that the self is a false self without any selfhood. Most grasp form and mistake it for true existence, enduring immeasurable suffering on the wheel of life and death. The practice of truth, or the reality of Prajna, accepted, there is no release from suffering in the 3 realms, no hope of freedom from worldly worries. It says in the Prajñāpāramitā Sūtra, all forms are unreal and illusory, and if they are seen as such, the Tathagata will be perceived because, originally, the true void is formless. The sutra says further, the one who sees me by form and seeks me by sound cannot perceive the Tathagata because of deluded views. This is to be understood as saying that the one who perceives the form or body and the sound or voice as the Buddha is grasping merely the form. Missing the true meaning of reality, he or she is unable to perceive that all dharmas are voidness. The sutra says further, a bodhisattva that still clings to the false notion of an ego, a personality, a being and a life is not a bodhisattva. Bodhisattvas, like the Buddhas, establish themselves in emptiness, apprehending their ego, personality, being, and life as false views rooted in duality. The one who hears this pure teaching with a clear and faithful mind can attain the really real, the reality that is formless. Those freed from all forms are called Buddhas. The sutra continues. The Prajñāpāramitā Hṛdaya Sūtra is the core of the Prajñāpāramitā Sutra in 600 scrolls. Its teaching is the teaching of supramundane voidness as the only true existence, the true void being mysteriously concealed in the existing. Therefore, one might say the substance of this sutra is the voidness of all dharmas, and non-obtaining is the purpose. There is nothing to be obtained from the manifestation of dharmas, all dharmas being void or empty. Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara, coursing deeply in the Prajñāpāramitā, comprehended the substance of the reality of prajna. All dharmas, as well as all five skandhas, are empty of self and completely free of thought. For this reason the Bodhisattva received the name Guanzai Zai Pusa. As the substance of all dharmas, voidness confirms the true reality of form as non-form. The one who understands that Buddha and sentient beings are not different can liberate all sentient beings from disease and calamity, end the cycle of birth and death, and attain perfect complete enlightenment and nirvana. The aggregate of form, Rupa Skandha, stands for all matter that is produced by causes and conditions. With no permanent substance and no separate lasting self. The remaining four skandhas are as follows. Feeling, conception, volition, and consciousness. They all belong to the dharma of mind, which is, likewise, void. But mind cannot find expression without form, and form cannot manifest itself without mind. Without form, mind cannot be expressed, without mind, form cannot be made manifest. In other words, apart from form there is no mind, and apart from mind there is no form. Although they are inseparable, they are not the same, as stated in the sutra. Form is voidness, and voidness is form. Being neither form nor mind, all dharmas are void here and now. This is the wonderful dharma of reality and suchness, transcending all others. The uninformed view the perceptible world with all its beings and non-beings as real or true. Some of them know that it is an illusion produced by the interaction of matter and mentality, that it is deceptive and impermanent, and that it must return to the void. That interpretation of voidness has not been especially created by Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in order to emphasize that all dharmas are rooted in emptiness, because all existence is originally devoid of selfhood and, therefore, empty. It is what they truly have been practicing for countless kalpas. All those who attain enlightenment attain understanding of the true substance of reality. They perceive that the five skandhas are empty and, thereby, overcome all ills and suffering. Ultimately, mind and form are not different. Likewise, the rest of the existing world has neither birth nor death, is neither pure nor impure, and it neither increases nor decreases, because it is originally void of selfhood. If one perceives birth as coming and death as going, or if one claims that clean is pure and dirty is defiled, holds full to be an increase and less a decrease, then one is not yet empty of skandhas. These views represent obstacles which bind. Not being able to liberate oneself, how can one hope to liberate others? When one has finally reached the understanding that all existence is produced by causes and conditions and is, therefore, empty of permanent self, then all reality equals stillness in the absence of diversified form. Then birth and death, pure and impure, increase and decrease, all are void. Without defiled thought arising, suffering and calamity vanish. The entire range of artificial or contrived forms is the result of the 6 organs, 6 kinds of data and 6 kinds of consciousness. Reality, in truth, does not comprise any realm. When the 5 skandhas are empty, there is no diversity of form. Without ignorance there is no ending of ignorance, and it is the same for old age and death. Supreme prajna is stillness without form. When one is neither the resultant person nor the dependent condition, one's suffering ends. When delusory thoughts and views are severed, it is the end of the cause of suffering. However, to relinquish the doctrine of unreality is to block the cessation of suffering. Without the 3 studies there is no path. If there is no subject of wisdom, it is called no wisdom. Without the object and its domain there is absolutely nothing to obtain. True mind is not empty, yet it is emptiness. Although bodhi is considered to be an attainment, there is really nothing to attain. To perceive the ground of all Buddhas is suchness. There are adornments everywhere, and 10,000 merits manifest themselves. When Dharmakaya becomes manifest, there is only true emptiness. Mind established in true emptiness completely encompasses the universe. There should be no seeking, no inside and no outside. The universe is not attainable in that way. As long as there is something to attain, there are obstacles, thought arises and there is then an object. To have an object means duality, which means the loss of true reality, which cannot be called the Prajñāpāramitā. The Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara practiced wonderful wisdom and attained enlightenment completely free of attachment. He entered emptiness, unobstructed, through the gate of liberation. Since there is nothing but emptiness, including the body, mind and all that exists, a bodhisattva is never moved by eulogy or ridicule, slander or fame. Even war, famine or the bubonic plague are dismissed by him or her as illusions taking hold through karma. Letting go of all that seemingly exists on its own, independently of the mind, sets forth brightness, and the one experiencing it will not be intimidated. The bodhisattva then enters the kind of liberation that is nirvana. Similarly, the one who has been practicing over a long period of time achieves wonderful calmness, which empowers him or her when faced with disturbance. Water cannot submerge such a one, nor can fire burn. Having attained liberation, the bodhisattva is fearless. Seeking dharma outside, in what exists apparently independently of the mind, is proceeding backward, perpetuating a misunderstanding of what is good and evil, dreaming of gain, and holding the cycle of birth and death to be the opposite of nirvana. It is essential to let go of distinctions such as dreaming versus thinking, right side up, etc. If one wants to enter the gate of liberation through non-action, only when the name or form is dispatched and there is no mind object can the original enlightenment become manifest and nirvana, the perfect liberation in the Dharmadhatu, be obtained. All the Buddhas in the three periods depend on the Prajñāpāramitā for the attainment of Anuttara Sayak Sambodhi. Due to their superb causes, they attain the fruit of sainthood. Thus, we know that the Prajñāpāramitā can dispose of all kinds of demons. Independent of personality and dharma, free at all times and in all places, the Buddhas manifest or remain concealed depending on their potential. The great mantra is beyond the comprehension of the saints and the worldly alike. Endowed with a power to sever ignorance, it radiates brilliance and stillness. This great bright mantra emanates unadulterated wisdom, and its power to transcend the three realms and attain supreme nirvana is beyond comparison. Illuminating throughout the 10 directions, it shines, like the sun, everywhere without discrimination. Such is the unequaled mantra. The one who can receive and hold this sutra and mantra will liberate all sentient beings from obstacles, release them from suffering and attain complete enlightenment. This is true and it is real. Therefore, the Prajñāpāramitā mantra says, gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. The great master Tan Su commented, the mantra belongs to the esoteric tradition and, accordingly, belongs to the 5 kinds of texts deemed primal, untranslatable, and inconceivable. When they are translated and explained, they will become conceivable dharma and their original meaning and merit will be lost. In short, the primary purpose of the Prajñāpāramitā mantra is to liberate self and others, traverse the sea of suffering, and, attaining complete enlightenment, reach the serenity and joy that is nirvana. Dharma Master Locked Young Men's Buddhist Association of America November 2000, Buddhist Year. 2544. Bronx, New York. Prologue by Grandmaster Tan Su. The Hṛdaya Sūtra or Heart Sutra is the topic under consideration. According to Grandmaster Chai, 538-597 CE, of the Tiantai sect, any speaker who endeavors to explain one of the Mahayana Sutras should cover 5 points of the scripture's profound meaning, or 5 profundities. What are they? They are as follows. 1. Explanation of terms and names. 2. Definition of the substance. 3. Clarification of the principles. 4. Discussion of the sutra's application. 5. Discernment of the doctrine. The 5 profundities regarding this sutra are as follows. The Dharma and the example stand for the name. All dharmas are empty or void of substance. Nothing there to be attained is the principle. Elimination of the 3 hindrances, greed, hatred and ignorance, is the application, and the ripening of the fruit is the doctrine. All of what follows will provide further explanation. In order to explain its name, the sutra should be seen and distinguished within the context of all of the Buddha's teaching. Altogether, there were 7 reasons for naming a sutra according to 7 categories, as follows. The first category consists simply of the name of the speaker of a particular sutra, for example, Amitabha Sutra, Vimalakirti Sutra, etc. In the second category, the name designates the teaching conveyed by that particular discourse, such as Nirvana Sutra or Mahaprajñāpāramitā Sutra, to give 2 examples. In the third category, the sutras are named to elucidate the doctrine they teach by analogy. The title Brahmajala Sutra derives from the net of banners used for the adornment of the palace of Mahabrahma. Each eye of the net is said to have contained a mani jewel, and its brightness reflected all the others ad infinitum. Likewise, the Buddha Dharma is forever reflected through the brightness of the radiant minds of all bodhisattvas. In the fourth category, the sutras are named after the persons seeking Dharma from the Buddha, e.g., the Sutra of Prajna for the benevolent king spoken by the Buddha. In that sutra, the Buddha teaches 16 benevolent kings. The Buddha and the kings are the persons, and Prajna is the Dharma. The fifth category combines an example specific to each case and the Dharma. The name Prajñāpāramitā Hṛdaya, Heart Sutra, for example, consists of Prajñāpāramitā, which is the Dharma, and Hṛdaya or heart, which is the specific example. More will be said on this subject later. In the sixth category, the name of a sutra expresses a connection between a person or a being and an object or event that is the clue to the Dharma. The title The Sutra of the Bodhisattva's Necklace, to give an example, hints at the transcendental adornments of a highly accomplished spiritual being. The Bodhisattva is the being, the necklace is the object, and their connection is the clue to the Dharma. The combination of the teacher's name and the name of the Dharma with an analog are included in the seventh category of titles. Consider, for instance, the title Buddhavadamsaka Mahavipulya Sutra. The Buddha is the teacher, Mahavipulya is the Dharma, and Avadamsaka is the analog. The Buddha attained the fruit of Buddhahood because he returned all the causes of all actions. The Vadamsaka is the analog, the ground of Buddhahood. Maha means great, suggesting that, in this instance, the doctrine is applied universally and accommodates all the other doctrines. Vipulya stands for function of pure karma in all places. Because of Buddha's attainment of that stage, the mind encompasses the universe and everything in the 10 directions is the Buddhasphere. Furthermore, each of the Buddha spheres encompasses a chiliakism. This is over the heads of most people because their only knowledge of this world is based on their narrow outlooks. To repeat then, the above 7 categories of titles as relevant to Mahayana sutras are based on either of the following: individuals, a particular dharma, an analog, or any combination of these. The title of the Prajñāpāramitā Hṛdaya Sūtra combines dharma, i.e., the Prajñāpāramitā, with a specific example heart or hೃದಯ. The terms used are in Sanskrit. Prajna means wisdom, and Prajñāpāramitā stands for wisdom acquired experientially by means of intuitive insight and perfected through cultivation to the level of transcendental knowledge. It is just the original wisdom of the mind, or the true mind. Why, then, add words to it? Because that sutra is axiomatic for the entire collection of the Prajñāpāramitā scriptures. Just as we consider the heart to be the center of the body, that sutra is the center and distills the essence of all the Prajñāpāramitā texts. Originally, since time immemorial, prajna has manifested itself as intuitive wisdom in all sentient beings. That is known as former wisdom, or wisdom of life. However, people became confused through grasping, and the true mind, fogged over by perverted views, manifested itself as obsessive thought patterns. The cycle of birth and death never stops turning the wheel of life and death, and it is difficult to get off. Actually, however, the true mind is never separate from us, not even for one moment. The Buddha spoke the Prajñāpāramitā Dharma for close to 22 years. Recorded and compiled, the resulting text consisted of 600 scrolls and it was delivered in 16 meetings of the assembly. The differences that existed were merely differences in expedient means adjusted to suit a particular potential, and, in every case, the aim was to free those who listened from perverted views, help them to abandon grasping, and teach them to return to the original source and understand their true mind. In other words, the Prajna teaching is aimed at removing confusion, bringing about the recognition of one's own true mind, and returning to the truth. According to this doctrine, the mind has 3 layers. The first is the layer of the deluded mind, the second is the Prajna mind, and the third is the center, the heart, or the pivot of the Prajna mind, which also is the relation of this sutra to the doctrine. The Heart Sutra is the axis of all the Prajñāpāramitā teachings. Taking further the example of the mind, one might call the Heart Sutra the absolute center of the central sutras. If we compare the core of this sutra with the mind of worldly people, the mind of Prajna is the true mind, and the mind of worldlings is the deluded mind. Again, the absolute center of the mind center may be perceived as consisting of 3 layers. The mind of worldlings, the mind of saints and bodhisattvas, and the mind of Buddhas. Minds of worldlings are immersed in suffering of many kinds. In contrast, the mind of a saint, the first level, represents the accomplished individual of the 2 vehicles, or a bodhisattva, and at the center of mind center is the Buddha, the ultimate or true mind. The mind of the Prajñāpāramitā Sutra is the true mind, also referred to as the essential wisdom. The essential wisdom we are speaking of is to be distinguished from the awareness of objects or the environment and their use and value, which usually characterized as knowledge by worldly people. The term paramita is Sanskrit and it means reaching the other shore. The Prajñāpāramitā, or the wonderful wisdom, courses like a boat, transporting all sentient beings across the sea of defilement to the other shore that is nirvana. The word nirvana, also Sanskrit, means transcending birth and death or, simply, liberation. The Prajñāpāramitā is, therefore, the essential wisdom and the center of all kinds of prajna. Almost every sutra functions on 2 levels simultaneously. One level is general, the other is specific. However, the Prajñāpāramitā Heart Sutra is just specific, although its title includes the word sutra due to usage, the text does not function at the general level. Sutra in Sanskrit originally meant to uphold, and when applied to principles, it upholds the principles of all the Buddhas, whether moving upward, downward, or upholding sentient beings according to their potential. If the one who understands Buddha Dharma upholds the principles of all the past Buddhas, he or she can liberate sentient beings. Whoever can understand the theory behind the flawless, accomplished Buddha can also understand how to uphold the potential of sentient beings. Sutra, then, means a shortcut and a well-frequented path. Finally, it means the way to complete enlightenment. The second profundity is the definition of substance. What, then, is the substance of the Heart Sutra? Starting with Sariputra, the characteristics of the voidness of all dharmas are non-arising through there is no wisdom, and there is no attainment whatsoever is the definition of its substance. Consequently, the characteristics of the voidness of all dharmas is the substance of this sutra. The third profundity is focused on the clarification of the purpose of a sutra. Since we already understand the meaning of this sutra's name as well as the meaning of its substance, we should have no difficulty understanding its principle or purpose. We should understand its principle according to the sentence there is nothing to be attained. When there is nothing to attain, one is able to discern the characteristics of emptiness. As to the discussion of the application of this sutra, it being the fourth profundity, it is to break off the three obstacles. What are these? They are as follows: passions, deeds, past karma, and retribution. Problems, worries and suffering all are related directly to the three obstacles. There are two kinds of retribution. Being the resultant person, being in the dependent conditions. Being the resultant person means being what we are physically, our bodies. Some are strong and in good health, so others respect them for it. Some are unsightly and unwholesome, so others dislike them. The strong, the weak, the long-lived and the short-lived, the beautiful and the ugly, the wise as well as the foolish, all have varied causes in their previous lives and, accordingly, receive diverse effects in their present existence. Those who have produced good causes in their previous existences enjoy good health, longevity, beauty and wisdom in this life. In contrast, those who generated evil causes in their past lives have various deficiencies and shortcomings in the present. This, then, is what being a resultant person means. Being in the dependent conditions relates to one's circumstances, including clothing, sustenance and shelter. Obviously, those who have all their needs satisfied live happily, favorable events occur, yet they do not now have to exert themselves because of good causes in their previous lives. A resultant person relies on the dependent conditions for survival, and the conditions, in turn, have their causes in his or her past existences. However, good karma practice and deeds that benefit others in the present will produce favorable effects in one's future existences. The connection between cause and effect must not be doubted. The obstacles resulting from past deeds come into existence because we live in this world. It really does not make any difference who is a layperson and who is a monk or a nun. Most are involved in interactions inevitably connected with existence within society, which frequently produce circumstances generating obstacles through karma. There are three kinds of karma: good, bad and transcendental. The obstacle of passion arises as retribution for deeds done in the past. The circumstances produced, then, are favorable or adverse according to karma. Striving to achieve one's goal combines with the confusion that usually accompanies it, producing numerous defilements, and the result is suffering. That is the obstacle of passion. The original defilements are 6 in number: greed, hatred, ignorance, the aggregates, doubt, and heterodox views. All three obstacles are severed naturally when the meaning this sutra is thoroughly understood, since the application of this sutra is the breaking off of the three obstacles. To get rid of the three obstructions is to be released from many kinds of suffering. Suffering is all-pervasive, and even devas must endure it, though to a much lesser degree than human beings. Therefore, the purpose of all Buddha Dharma is to depart from suffering and to dwell in happiness. Discernment of the doctrine is the fifth profundity. Since we have already reached some understanding as to the meaning of the sutra in terms of the four profundities, i.e., its name, substance, principles and application, we are now in a position to proceed to a discussion of this last one. The entire body of the Buddha's teaching can be divided into 5 phases. And using the example of the 5 ways in which milk is used to provide nourishment can be applied to situate the Heart Sutra in its proper position in the entire context of the Buddha's teachings. While teaching, the Buddha frequently referred to the example of the white cow of Snow Mountain. On the slopes of Snow Mountain grow many varieties of grass that make cows healthy and strong. The milk is wholesome and rich in nutrients and helps those who drink it to survive better. Similarly, the Buddha Dharma can nourish our wisdom and, thus, the example of the 5 uses of milk appropriately illustrates the 5 stages of the Buddha's teaching. Initially, the Buddha delivered the essence of the Avatamsaka Sutra, Huayan in Chinese, it being the first phase of his teaching. It was the teaching as formulated in the Mahayana Sutras, and those people with obstructions could not rise to its level. It was like offering fresh raw milk to a baby, those with obstructions could not digest its message. The second phase is represented by the agamas, which are comparable to thin, sour milk. The Buddha spoke the Avatamsaka Sutra first, so that the eyes of Mahayana Bodhisattvas would open to the view and awareness of the Buddhas. At that time, many with shallow roots could not and would not accept these highest teachings. Though they had eyes, they could not see, though they had ears, they could not hear, though they had mouths, they could not ask. It was as if they were blind, deaf and mute. The Buddha continued teaching the Avatamsaka for 21 days to convert all those with bodhisattva potential. Many who could not listen formulated, later on, the Theravada tradition. In the Deer Park, the Buddha chose to teach the agamas, thereby making his teaching comparatively easier to understand. 5 of his friends attained deep understanding and became his first disciples, and that marked the beginning of what later became the Theravada tradition. The Buddha taught the agamas for close to 12 years. Those who could not follow the teachings during the Avatamsaka phase can be compared to babies who, unable to digest fresh milk, can take it thin down or after it is allowed to turn. The teaching of the Agamas is comparable to milk that is, thus, made easier to digest. The third phase is the Vipulya, interpreted as containing the doctrines of equal relevance. This phase is comparable to milk of full strength that is allowed to turn in order to be easily digestible. During that time the Buddha spoke 4 kinds of teachings and the division into Theravada and Mahayana was not marked. This phase is said to have lasted for approximately 8 years. The fourth phase, that of Prajñā, is believed to have lasted for 22 years. It can be compared to the ripened curd. The nourishment it provides is concentrated as well as being easily digestible. The fifth phase relates to the Hṛdaya Sūtra and to the Nirvana Sutra. In contrast to the milk simile above, this phase has the quality of clarified butter. During that period the Buddha is said to have taught Mahayana Dharma, the unimpeded teaching pointing directly at the mind. To summarize, the Buddha taught Dharma in 5 stages and each of these displays 2 facts: expediency and reality. Expediency means following the causes and conditions, such as the sentiment and potential of sentient beings in a given situation. Reality equals truth or the absence of falsehood. The Buddha spoke the truth of his unsurpassed wisdom directly. The 5 stages can profitably be reviewed for their expediency-reality balance. 1. The earliest stage, that of the Avatamsaka Mahavipulya Sutra, is said to consist of expediency and reality, or truth, in equal proportion. Expediency means promoting the understanding of reality. The teaching of reality makes entry into the wisdom of Buddhas possible. Thus, the first stage includes both expediency and reality. 2. The stage of the Agamas is focused on expediency. The Buddha adapted his teachings to the potential of sentient beings, specifically of those in the world. Consequently, he did not discuss the superb Dharma at that time. Agama is a Sanskrit term, meaning incomparable. The term incomparable Dharma is intended to convey the conviction that nothing can be compared with the Agamas. 3. In the Vipulya stage, the proportion between expediency and reality is about 3 parts to 1, expediency being predominant. What are the expedient teachings? The first expedient teaching was later developed into the Sutra section of the Tripitaka. It deals with the 2 vehicles Sravaka and Pratyeka in relation to their ending the cycle of birth and death in terms of allotment only, but not ending the cycle of mortal changes. Nevertheless, the 2 vehicles have birth and death. The second expedient teaching of the third stage is the earliest formulation of Mahayana, specifically, the Dharma of the attainment of non-birth. The third expedient is the teaching of differentiation. The fourth expedient teaching belonging to this stage is the Dharma of reality. Manifesting progressively the doctrine of perfect teachings during the third stage, the Buddha is said to have taught these 4 different approaches. 4. The stage of Prajñā, or the fourth stage, is reflected in the Prajñā scriptures. It is said to be composed of 2 parts expediency and 1 part reality, i.e., it is the Mahayana teaching, or the great vehicle. 5. The fifth stage, that of the Sad Dharma Pandarika and Nirvana Sutras, is the stage of the Dharma of reality, or truth, without concern regarding expediency. At that stage, the Buddha had little time left and could not afford to spend it worrying about the potential of the assembly. Following his delivery of the Sutra of Bequeath teaching during his final period, the Buddha entered his final nirvana. The Heart Sutra, the topic of the detailed commentary below, belongs to the 4th stage according to the above scheme. It is said to consist of 2 parts expediency and 1 part reality, and it is comparable to well-ripened curd. Thank you for listening. As you already know, the Buddha always emphasized the importance of generosity supporting the spread of the Dharma for spiritual growth. We can cultivate this virtue in our digital age. By subscribing, liking, and sharing our channel, you're supporting the dissemination of valuable teachings, much like the Sangha was supported in the past. Your engagement accumulates positive karma for you and helps make the Dharma accessible to a wider audience, a meritorious act indeed. Let's do this with pure intentions, free from attachment and selfishness, fostering a sense of community and supporting our own spiritual journey. These principles, rooted in Buddhist ethics, continue to guide us. You will receive great blessings for supporting the propagation of Buddha's teachings in a very simple way. By subscribing, liking, and sharing to help spreading the Buddha teaching to all human beings. Wishing you and your family always have a peaceful and happy life.